In this lesson, I'll walk through the steps of installing the .NET Core Framework and tools on a Mac. Now, the instructions on their website are very good, but if you're not used to working with a Mac, or if you're not used to installing some of these things like Homebrew and OpenSSL, then you might run into a few small hurdles that I'll cover in this comprehensive walkthrough. And so the first thing that I did, and I think it's important that you install all available updates for your Mac before you even begin. And once you have your Mac in good shape, then you can navigate to http://dot.net to acquire the tools that you'll need. And once you get there, you'll click on the Download .NET Core 1.0, making sure that you're in the Mac area. And like I said, the instructions are pretty good. What we're going to ultimately do is install a tool called Homebrew, and that will help us to install OpenSSL. So if you take a look at Homebrew and open it up in another browser tab, you'll see that it is essentially the way that you can acquire other software. And so you'll want to make sure to copy that line of code and paste that into a terminal prompt. So I open up a terminal and I just pasted it in, and you can see it begins the process. I need to type in my password in order to give it sudo permissions to install the packages that I'll need. And sometimes you'll have to wait quite a while to download things like, for example, this Xcode, command line tools for Xcode. It took like, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes to download that. And after a few minutes, I have to type in my password again, and it continues downloading and installing the various packages. Okay, so then after a few minutes, Homebrew is finished installing. Now remember, this is just a means to an end. We're going to use this to install OpenSSL. So first thing we're going to do is run brew update. That'll make sure that everything is updated on our local version of Homebrew. And then we want to install OpenSSL. So brew install OpenSSL, just like the instructions to the right give us. We're downloading the packages, unzipping them. And then the next set of instructions tell us that we need to type in brew link -- force OpenSSL. So Homebrew installs packages to their own directory, a directory called a seller. So it's user/local/seller/package name. And the link option that we typed in creates symlinks for the files of a package into the user local so that they can be called by any user on the system. And that -- force ensures that there are no warnings that will stop this process. All right, so now that we've finished step 1, we can continue on to step 2, which is to download the official installer for the .NET Core SDK. You can find the package installer then in your recent downloads. Mine's on the toolbar, and so if you click it to actually install it, you might get an error message that looks like this. A warning about installing packages from identified developers. So to get around this security restriction, you want to open up your system preferences and you want to navigate to the security and privacy icon. So I'm just going to type in security here in my system preferences. You can see it up there on that first line. And on the general tab, you're going to see where you could permanently turn off this setting. However, in this case, all we need to do is just click the Open Anyway button, and that will actually launch the installer. And now we can continue on with the installation, agree to the terms and conditions. We'll want to give it our password for our Mac. And then hopefully after a few moments, the installer should successfully complete the process. And so at this point, what we can do is there's an optional step here. I'm not sure that you need to, but you could reboot. I went to the terminal window and attempted to run just the simple command .NET -- help. And actually, let me make a directory here first. So I'm going to make a directory called Hello World and then change into that directory. And then let's actually just try to create .NET New, and it'll say the .NET command's not found. So at this point, I'm going to need to reboot my computer. And so after reboot, I want to relaunch my terminal window. And then immediately I'm going to type in .NET-help. That should give me a list of all the commands and arguments for .NET. I may want to check which version of the .NET Core I have installed, or I can even use .NET-info to see not only which version of the command line tools I have, but then also which version of the .NET Core, as well as other information about my operating system and so on. So you might notice that the .NET Core framework and the .NET command line tools have the same version identifier. So despite the fact that the .NET Core framework has the phrase preview 2, that's only used to sync it up with the tooling. It's actually the production version, so you're in good shape there. Now, if you were able to invoke the .NET command line interface driver by any of those commands we just saw a moment ago, then you're probably ready to proceed on to lesson number 4. Admittedly, I'm going to be using Windows and Notepad to edit the source code, and then we'll use Visual Studio maybe briefly later on in this course, but you should be able to follow along using your favorite code editor on the Mac. So just to recap, it's easy to acquire and install the tools on a Mac for .NET Core. If you're not experienced with the terminal and with Bash, it can be a little bit challenging. If you've never worked with Homebrew, it might be a little bit challenging. It was for me. But we're going to become much more familiar with the .NET driver and with the terminal here if we stick with the Mac side of things throughout the rest of this course. So I look forward to working on this, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.